Hello, my name is Ken Nair, and I'm with Christ Quest Ministries, where we disciple men to become the kind of spiritual leaders who are living examples of the Christ. Talk about extremes. This message is going to require an extremely high level of discipline. It is give up the right to share any of my wife's faults with her. My decision was that I would exclusively focus on me and become an example of the Christ to her. Hopefully then I could earn the privilege of being God's representative to her, enabling me to be a living example of God's loving and protective authority of her. It turns out that humility is a significant part of the groundwork necessary for godly spiritual leadership in me. But there's an absolutely essential step that must accompany humility, and that is, I need to learn the fine art of self-examination. Self-examination introduces me to the me that needs to recognize I am so un-Christ-like that I have no justification for critically evaluating anyone else. The absence of me being critical, condemning, or judgmental increases my wife's willingness to see me as a credible spiritual instructor and leader. She'll see me as one who does not act as though I have no faults. Rather, she'll see me as a man who's seeking to apply scriptural answers in his own life first. Another consideration, I need to not exhibit the kind of attitude that I'm primarily searching Scripture for answers in order to instruct others. You know, like I'm reading my Bible and I see a Scripture and I think, oh, this is the perfect verse for Joan or Tom or whoever. Or I hear a sermon and I'm so glad that Susie's here. She needs to hear this. Another blessing from God that comes from giving up the right to share my wife's faults with her is it frees me to successfully develop, increase, and enhance my ability for self-examination, which brings greater maturity to my spirit as I put my sin nature to death. Of course, it's going to involve a totally new thinking process for me, a brand new procedure wherein I engage my spirit and search out my thinking process more deeply than I previously knew was even possible. My continuing goal is to discover more and more of my emotions in various situations that have been motivating my thinking. My thinking then, not God's thinking, is where I draw conclusions, which then prompts how I spoke and acted in response to my thinking in that situation. As I have accomplished those steps of self-examination, I can reflect on how I respond and then determine if my actions were under the influence of my sin nature or the Spirit of God. Here's a prime example of that procedure. Let's say Nancy asks me to fix something. I accept. Then she asks me, how are you going to do it? I get angry and tell her to back off. I know what I'm doing, and I don't want to waste time talking when I could be doing. Her spirit was wounded by my offensive attitude, and she reacted accordingly. I normally would determine that her reacting was her problem and would walk away, concluding that I'm the better person, since I didn't let her negative immature reactions lure me into any argument, better known as a fight. But I'm on a new course. I decided and was determined to apply this brand new procedure of self-examination. So, I first asked myself, why did I get so angry when she asked me how I was going to do it? As I thought about it, the reason behind my emotional reaction of anger was I concluded she was questioning my skills and ability, making me feel like she thinks I'm inadequate. Did it even occur to me that God was giving me an opportunity to bring comfort to her spirit, showing her how much I value her by taking the time and advantage of this opportunity by making her a priority, taking the time to explain to her how I was going to get it done? Not in the least. More self-examination. I asked myself, what was my thinking when I walked away? Emotionally, I was aggravated at what I concluded was her challenging me, leading me to conclude that she's getting mad at me and wanting to blame me for her bad temper anger, which she brought on herself, even though I'm graciously following through with her project. The next part of this procedure is vital. I asked myself, if my wife were married to Jesus, would he have understood her real motives and ministered to her spirit by satisfying her curiosity? Would he have been offended and exhibited hostile attitudes like those I manifested? Of course, my answer would be no. He would have been Christ-like. This is the type of conversation I will continue to conduct within myself, using this brand new procedure. I ask me, considering my thinking, my conclusions, my words and actions, who was the greatest influence in this situation between me and Nancy? My sin nature or the Spirit of God? I would conclude, is there any question? It was my sin nature. More self-talk. Thanks, God, for alerting me through this situation that I need to recognize a pattern in my sin nature that is so common to me. And now that I'm alert to it, I am determined to be on guard against it. Then as I see it getting ready to influence me again, I can defeat it. If I'm really sincere about becoming a wise, Christ-like husband, I'll require of myself that the following question becomes a natural reflex in my mind. Are my wife's faults a reflection of my failures? As her spiritual leader, if I were indeed like the Christ, whatever her problems may be, wouldn't I know how to bring her to a place of spiritual healing and wholesome maturity? The answer would be yes. If indeed my life's purpose was to become a living example of the Christ to my wife, and that's my goal, and I will avail myself of her help, having her help me fulfill my own goal of being a living example of the Christ, helping me see where, how, why, and when I'm not being like Jesus to her. God and I want that same freedom for you. Thanks for joining me. If you feel this message has been a blessing to you, please subscribe. It's free. Share it with others. Like it and comment on it. Then too, maybe the Lord might prompt you to consider blessing Christ Quest Ministries with a contribution. Till next time, this is Ken Nair, signing off.